Well, hello and happy September. This is the look-see for September 15th, 2024, a little bit early because I'm going to be traveling. And we have a lot of interesting things to share. So I'm going to start with some comments about the UN and their wholesale immigration plans, and then go to the topic of cryptocurrencies, which I haven't looked at in a while. Then return to say a little bit more about the road closures that I started talking about last month. And there are other topics too numerous to mention, so let's begin. Number one, the powers that want to be have decided to try a new idea. They have moved from the idea of globalizing businesses to the idea of globalizing humanity. The UN has created a document called the Declaration on Future Generations. They want this document to be adopted this month, and we're talking about August here. So to help ensure adoption, they are trying something new by instituting a new process called the silence procedure. The silence procedure means that if they declare a new rule and no one says anything or objects to the rule, that will mean that everyone agrees to that declaration by default. So instead of holding hearings and gathering reactions, suggestions, and input, they are just going to put their decisions out there. And if nobody pays any attention or says anything, then boom, it's a done deal. How convenient for them. I'm wondering how many people pay any attention to the workings of the UN. And I'm also wondering, why does the UN have any right to decide anything about us? They're not our government. In fact, they're not anybody's government. Let me read the critical paragraph in the Declaration on Future Generations. Paragraph 32 says that they want to, quote, strengthen cooperation among states to ensure safe, orderly, and regular migration between countries of origin, countries of transit, and countries of destination. So origin, transit, and destination, including expanding pathways for regular migration, while recognizing the positive contribution of migrants to inclusive growth and sustainable development. So I think what they're referring to here, the positive contribution, is really for votes, and the sustainable development is to sustain their structure, their business, their government. So this paragraph opens the door to people being moved around the planet as if they are pawns on a chessboard. The words ensure regular migration say it all. It could come down to people having no say in where they live, because the powers that want to be are ensuring regular migration. I received notice of this declaration at 7:22 p.m. That was after supper on August 16th. The notice stated that the deadline for voicing an objection and breaking the silence procedure was 4 p.m. that afternoon, Eastern Time, August 16th. It was already 3 hours too late to say anything. And of course, the person we were supposed to send objections to was the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield. So how many of us have Linda Thomas Greenfield's email handy in our contact list? If this is how the silence procedure is going to work, then the UN has what looks like an open field to decide and declare whatever they want. If we are watching, listening, and even anticipating, we lose. Number 2, I haven't looked at cryptocurrencies in a long while because every time I focused on them, all I could see was contradiction and confusion. Sometimes it looked like cryptos would be fine. Other times it looked as if they were all a scam and going to collapse. So I would then go out on the web to see what people were saying about cryptos, and I would hear Whitney Webb saying BlackRock was going to destroy the crypto market. And then I would hear Michael Saylor saying cryptos are the only way to the future. Gerald Celente would push for gold or silver. Cliff High kept saying that cryptos were going to be the future of money. And Peter Thiel mourned the fact that he didn't get into crypto sooner. However, something is changing in the cryptocurrency world. Now, maybe it's because Trump has endorsed crypto. And it's becoming solidified in the minds of the population. Since we are the ones shaping our reality, that makes a big difference. When I went to look this month, I saw something I hadn't seen before. It was that cryptos were supposed to be the tool of the cabal, but they have lost control of it. Now, that is not what I went looking for. I just wanted to see how cryptos were doing over this next quarter. So when I asked, well, who has control of cryptos? The answer came back, the people. So I'll just say, it appears that cryptos have turned some kind of corner, and don't ever tell me that you don't have any power. Okay? I think you're the ones that are solidifying it. Number 3. In the last look-see, I shared my experience of trying to get back home from Albuquerque in the face of road closures everywhere. And I also said that the great number of simultaneous road closures were A, either the result of very poor planning, or B, a very cheap attempt to be able to say, oh, look, we're fixing the roads, vote for us. Or C, a deliberate plan to prevent escape. If anything happened that would necessitate a quick move to another location, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to get there quickly and easily. After that look-see was uploaded, people wrote from everywhere saying the same thing was happening in lots of places across the US and even in Europe and England. So I began thinking about this more deeply, wondering if there was some kind of plan being concocted to cause us more frustration or entrap us. If the powers that want to be are planning on forced vaccinations, which is something that New Zealand just declared they were going to do by tying people down and forcibly injecting them with whatever shot they decide is needed, then catching people in their cars would be one way to do that. But that's not all. The next thing was that because of coming turbulence in society, severe curfews would be declared in some locations or even martial law. If martial law were not ended in a reasonable amount of time, people would scurry around on the back roads trying to take care of needs, but this would be hampered by the many road closures, forcing people along predetermined roads. And the last thing that came to me was that all of these roads could be left undone in the coming bank collapse. So heads up, people. We may have a mess on our hands. Number 4. Back to traveling. Maybe I'm naive or behind the times here, but something I saw when I was traveling in Illinois upset me. I was on a long, quiet stretch of I-70 when I noticed 3 streetlights in the middle of nowhere. There were no houses, no businesses in that area that would call for streetlights. There were only cornfields and wooded areas stretching for miles. Attached to each streetlight was a camera. I wondered, why would anyone need to be taking pictures of traffic in that area? But a mile or two down the expressway and around a curve in the road, there sat 2 police cars, each pointed in the opposite direction. Suddenly, I realized that the cameras were monitoring speed and feeding that information to the 2 cops sitting in wait. Anyone coming around that curve would have already been tracked, and perhaps a picture of the offending car would accompany the speeding data. Now, I'm quite used to cops and their need to write a minimum number of tickets each week to meet their quota. I used to be married to a Detroit cop, so I know how they work. I have no problem with them, and I appreciate their presence, especially if you need one and happen to get a good one. I also have no problem with the idea of a speed monitored by airplane or helicopter, but usually there's a sign warning you of that practice. Now, I tend to be a slow driver, but somehow this new way of tracking and surveilling us struck me as sneaky. Maybe it is a common practice and I just never noticed it before. But I hope that we are not degenerating into a population of sneaks, crooks, and games of cat and mouse. Anyway, watch your speed, you guys. Number 5. Ford Motor Company recently announced they were going to quit producing electric vehicles. I was both happy and sad to hear this. Happy because there were so many problems associated with electric vehicles, and too many people were being taken in by the advertising and then being stuck with something that didn't work very well. But I was sad because the promise of the electric vehicles never materialized or had a chance to develop further into something that actually did work beautifully. Ford's own statement was, EVs suck. Oh my. And then they said, we have a brand new electric truck with 25 miles on it. We listed it for $7,000 and we couldn't sell it. Nobody wanted it. Ford said it would cost them $1.5 billion to shift away from producing electric vehicles. And that's a hefty price to pay for not having the courage to stand up to a government trying to tell them how to run their business in the first place. Number 6. We are getting pretty close to November and election time, and there hasn't been much mention of mail-in ballots compared to the last election, where that was a central issue for months. Other countries are also struggling with mail-in ballots. Germany just had an election, and 2 of the 3 parties that were hoping to get enough votes to stand up to the controllers lost. Each of those 2 parties needed 1 more vote, and that vote would have given them the power to block corrupt or undesirable legislation. So they are now calling for an election audit. Sound familiar? And they're pressing that forward quite vigorously. Just be aware that the U.S. is not the only one trying to restore some semblance of reasonable elections and government. I find it comforting to think that people everywhere are recognizing that something is amiss in our governments. It gives me hope that change is possible. Number 7, in looking ahead, it's easy to see why there's such a huge likelihood of war over the next 2 years. Much of that is urban war, and the rest is war against governments. We should keep in mind that not all governments are bad, but because many governments have been taken over by hidden players who use those governments to milk us, to control us, to slaughter us, and trade us as if we were cattle and slaves, people throughout the West have reached their limits of tolerance. The little man in brown robes said that Canada and Hawaii would be the first places to confront their government and break up or break away. In fact, Canada and the U.S. suffer the same fate at almost the same time, but Canada goes first. The turning point to avoid what is coming for both countries was 2021, but neither country made the turn. Neither country made the turn. It would have required the people to take charge of the government. It was too sharp of a turn, and we were moving too fast to negotiate the curve. Still, the chance was there. Canada is bigger in landmass, but smaller in population. Because of the severe winters and the very short growing season, Canadians must work together or they will not survive. And they know this. Their French population is a critical factor in their survival because the French have a very short emotional fuse. They are vocal and active because of their long decades, centuries really, of semi-awakened consciousness inherited from the Merovingian dynasty. Even though that inheritance has faded somewhat, some of it's still there, and they are quicker to see, to say what they see, and to take action that makes sense to them. So we'll see what happens, but it looks like both the US and Canada break into smaller pieces, and that process is right around the corner. Number 8. Sticking with the topic of governance, Liz Cheney and others often say, Trump is a danger, but they seldom say why he is a danger or what he is a danger to, other than to our democracy. Since we have a republic and not a democracy, the only danger I can see is to their structures of corruption. What are those structures? They are mainly banking and government power, but those structures also include surveillance and communication equipment, the structure of taxation, and the use of government to unfairly control and manipulate people in ways that take blatant advantage of them. In my opinion, democracy is mob rule. Perhaps you have heard me use the phrase, well, that's like trying to remove a wart with a sledgehammer. Democracy does not allow any finesse in working together. The will of the majority is forced on everyone. However, this only works if the minority is just a few people, and it fails miserably when the minority is half the population. A republic is a little better, a little. It uses elected representatives to make decisions. However, when all of the elected representatives have been compromised by fraud and extortion, the Republic fails to work for anyone. When it comes to governance, what is our problem going forward? It is the lack of workable ideas as to how we could reorganize and live together wisely and well. Where I come from, people organize in small circles and groups to make all of the critical decisions needed by the group in the course of life. Of course, this only works if people are mature, if they're educated and engaged. It is for this reason that my people focus so heavily on the full development of consciousness in every single individual. We need each one to be personally responsible. When you are mature, you accept that responsibility gladly because you know it is the foundation of your personal power. When there is a problem, which is not often, we consult with another group at an even higher level of consciousness. That wiser group issues guidelines, but they are guidelines that are not binding. Guidelines that are not binding. Should I say it again? But those guidelines are very helpful in sparking further discussion and examination of the problem while also maintaining cooperation and peace among the people. Communication is regular and open, and most things are settled without the interventions of the wise ones. For those in the US and the Western countries, we either have to mature and develop our consciousness in alignment with higher dimensions, or we're going to go down. It seems like an easy choice as far as I'm concerned. Number 9, there's a deepening understanding of what has been done to us in the name of health. This is good, but the effects of the shot in the arm have led to the feeling of being betrayed by the people in the medical system. This has created an upwelling of anger, which I'm sure you have noticed. And this anger has spread across the US and the West. And over the next few weeks and months, it increases in intensity. Those doctors and CDC officials who forced or pushed the shot on us become very nervous, and it appears that there is some kind of violence toward them that escalates in response to a new attempt to create a new pandemic using monkeypox. Those who work in the medical system should maintain situational awareness. The rest of us would do well to stay in a place of peace and not get involved if that anger should come to your area or your place of work. My own personal attitude is that the majority of officials knew exactly what they were doing. They're not stupid. And there should be some justice, but not via vigilante groups. It looks like the power and control that the medical system once had fades dramatically from this point forward. People seem to have the attitude they would rather die than go see someone in the medical system. But that's not the best attitude. Do take care of yourself, but go get help when you need it. There are many wonderful and excellent doctors and nurses willing to help those in need. Now, if someone strikes you as not trustworthy, don't hesitate to change and find someone else. Like I said, there are many very good people who are doctors and nurses. Number 10. Even though it is heading into winter in the north, And well past the growing season, people everywhere are still trying to grow something. And it looks like there's a discovery or maybe a rediscovery of real food. Hallelujah. There's a great sense of satisfaction that comes from being in nature. Even if it's just that you have dragged nature into your kitchen or your dining room in the form of pots of lettuce, herbs, carrots, or any other kind of food. The love affair with real food is just beginning. Enjoy. Number 11. I have a friend who is a dream walker like myself. She is the only one I know besides myself who writes down all of her dreams, types them up at the end of the year, and reads the entire year's worth of dreams to see what she can learn about herself, maybe the world, and she indexes them for easy reference. So this morning she wrote to me saying, quote, "Things have been pretty quiet here. I've been having the usual dreams, nothing out of the ordinary, but I have put in a request from my dream self to let me know when things are changing that may affect me. I believe I had one of those dreams this morning. It sure got my attention." And then she wrote the dream as follows. I am in my father's house, and through the window, I see people on our property. Firemen, all dressed in their emergency gear. One goes by the window and raps on it to get our attention. I go outside wanting to know what is going on in the neighborhood. And a fireman says, "Trees are falling. Stay clear." Sure enough, I look across the street and I see the rather large trees that line the street are falling one after the other in a cascading fashion. Fortunately, I had a tree removed in front of our house that was not doing well, and the falling trees will not affect us. That was the end of the dream. And here's her analysis combined with a few points of my own. First, she was in her father's house, which symbolizes the male patriarchy we live in, as well as a time and place where she felt safe and protected. The patriarchy, the male side of civilization, is for protection. It's supposed to be. Let's see here. She looks through a window and she sees people on her property. Now, to Lenny, who is the dreamer in this case, the view from the window symbolizes a psychic prediction or warning. Looking through a window symbolizes seeing a situation that's being framed up or highlighted for her to see. The fact that people are in her yard says that something's very close and not some distance away in space and time. And this also indicates that there is a threat to the property and material things she owns. The firemen in emergency gear symbolize that something's causing a serious emergency, and the use of the word fireman points to not only serious change, but complete transformation, because fire completely transforms a substance or a situation. The idea here is that something is changing very quickly as well. It's on fire. The fireman who raps on the window indicates that consciousness is filling her request to be notified when something will affect her. The rapping on the window gets her attention, which makes sure she gets the message. When she goes outside to see what's happening in the neighborhood, this symbolizes that she will likely witness things firsthand because they're occurring in her neighborhood. That's the people around her. The fireman who tells her, quote, the trees are falling and she should stay clear, indicates that something with many branches is falling, and she's advised to maintain her clarity. She then looks across the street. The street, quote unquote, is Lenny's term for the banking system as well as for the commercial sector. It is my term for Wall Street, which is often referred to as the street. Trees usually represent a family of some sort, and the falling trees would represent a family of businesses, each with many branches, which could be banks or really big businesses like Walmart, Amazon, or other chains. The tree that was removed in front of their house because it was not doing well symbolizes that she will be okay, because she already saw that things did not look good and took measures to remain unaffected by situations like this. Overall, the dream tells us that things are about to accelerate somewhat abruptly and drastically, probably in the banking world. I think I reported in another earlier look-see that my credit union would not let me take money out of my account except in small bits. I asked them, well, what if I want to take out a larger sum? And they said I had to put in an order and it would take 2 weeks. So when I look ahead, it looks as though things become more unpredictable after September 9th. So I hope you guys are ready for something, something big to happen and a bit of a wild ride. Take some advice from Lenny's dream and maintain your clarity. It looks like the financial sector is about to undergo some changes. Number 12. I started listening to an update by Dr. Brian Ardis on the presence of snake venom in water, and it struck me how doctors and people in authority began telling us, the people, about 30 to 40 years ago that we needed to drink more water. How unfortunate. They were already putting fluoride in the water, and that was bad enough. Now we had bad people start putting worse things in the water right at the same time our authority figures started telling us we needed to drink more water. I hope that was a coincidence. Number 13. The fact that more and more people are worried about going into a retail store and ending up caught in some kind of gun violence has brought California and New York to sign a law requiring retailers to install a panic button that, when pushed, immediately dispatches police to the site. Their goal is to limit violence and save lives. However, Walmart and several big retail groups are fighting this because of the expense of putting in the button. They are calling for, quote, a genuine holistic approach to store and community safety, end quote. A genuine and holistic approach. I wonder what they mean by that. I also wonder if their definition of holistic approach would be the same as mine. My idea of holistic approach would be to start by nurturing the words and behaviors that support the practice of caring for all members of a community. Then, developing individual consciousness in every member of the community. And finally, dealing with the gross neglect of employees, customers, and communities by government and business, because all they care about is their money and profits. My idea of a holistic approach would require a new pricing system that cannot keep raising prices without raising wages. And it would require an end to the tort laws that only favor businesses while leaving customers to deal with serious losses. Anyway, to accomplish my idea of a holistic approach would take a long time. It seems to me that neither government or business is prepared to do anything holistic. In the meantime, lives could be saved by using that panic button. It looks to me like the panic button and a holistic approach working together would be a very good idea for now. Number 14. For months and months, I kept looking for an election, but I didn't see one. It always looked the same. There were no candidates. Over and over, I would see the same few scenarios. However, just before recording this month's Look-See, I saw a hint of change. Now, it didn't look like it was a for sure change, but I did see an election and Donald Trump was elected. However, the big problem was getting him to the inauguration. So we need to hold the intention in both mind and heart that all the candidates are safe, that those individuals who are blackmailing our congresspeople are being removed, and common sense will return, and the natural good-heartedness of humanity will come to the fore again. In case you are interested, here are the scenarios that were coming up the most often. Scenario number 1. Joe Biden has dropped out of the race, leaving Kamala Harris to run for president against Trump. And that's exactly what's happened so far. But Trump then disappears. Is there another assassination attempt? Or is he in jail? The election is postponed. Joe Biden resigns, and Harris steps into the role of president. The promise is that there will be an election in the spring as soon as they come up with another candidate to replace Trump. But people are stuck with Harris and seem stunned at the way things have unfolded. It takes them months to wake up and take action. A lot of people are completely ready to wash their hands off the entire government. Scenario number 2. This is slightly different and not nearly as strong a possibility, but it keeps coming up. Something happens to Kamala Harris. She is no longer a candidate. The election is not held because there is only one candidate. Then an unexpected announcement is made that Donald Trump is stepping up as the real president of the United States. There is an effort to educate the public about the work that has been going on quietly in the background to clear corrupt members of government and business, and to get to those people pulling the strings at the top. But there's fighting in the streets sparked by those who hate Trump. There's martial law for a time. Scenario number 3. There's a problem in the banking sector due to a virus. The virus affects the entire internet. The election cannot be held because the internet is not working, and neither are the voting machines. Donald Trump is then sentenced to go to jail. Between the lack of access to money and the shutdown of the internet, everything comes to a standstill. Without the election and with Trump headed for jail, people are in shock. Society begins collapsing. There is fighting in the streets. Scenario number 4. The election is held. Trump wins. And then he's stripped of his title and sent to jail, leaving us with arguments about whether Harris and Walz should take over or Vance should step in. Attempts are made to extract Trump from jail and get to the inauguration, but those attempts fail. So there is no inauguration. The arguments then shift to say that Vance and Kennedy should step into the presidency, but without an inauguration, we are left with Harris and Walz. People on the other side are arguing that, no, J.D. Vance was not elected as president. The promise is that there will be a new election next spring, but people cannot wait. There is fighting in the streets. And finally, scenario number 5, there is an election and Donald Trump is elected. But something happens on the way to the inauguration. It looks as if the person who was playing Donald Trump is assassinated. The real Donald Trump is still alive. The dilemma is how to bring out the real Trump without looking as bad as the Democrats and their clones and body doubles. The announcement is made that the real Trump is going to be inaugurated. There's fighting in the streets. So those are the 5 scenarios. Of course, everything could go perfectly over the next few months, and all of these scenarios could be irrelevant. So stay open, stay flexible, and stay vigilant. I will close by reminding you that reality unfolds according to what you are thinking and feeling. Don't get caught in hopelessness. We are winning. The cabal is losing. We know it, and they know it. We just have to keep our eye on the ball. Now, don't be dismayed if that ball bounces off in some unexpected direction. Just go retrieve it. We are moving slowly but steadily toward a new world. One without overflowing corruption, without an unfair legal system or an unfair economic system and a useless medical system that has forgotten what it means to heal people. Spend a bit of time each day thinking about your ideal life and how you might go about making that life become your everyday reality. Feel it, because feeling is primary. We need people who have begun to free themselves from the old world and who have some creative ideas for the new world, and people who know how to generate love. So that's it for this look-see. So for those who are watching or listening for the first time, the look-see is a brief look at what's happening in our world and where the big trends are headed. Reality is not fixed. It's very dynamic and it changes according to what we're doing with our consciousness. Nothing becomes real until we make it real. We make a choice, we take some kind of action, put something together or take something apart. Those are the decisive actions that determine the path and the outcome. And of course, once we set something in motion, it takes a lot to make a change or get things going in another direction. So that's the reason for looking ahead. If we see something we like, we can put some conscious attention on that outcome and help things along. So let me say, it's important to look ahead and assess what is happening and where are we going, so we know whether or not we need to do something different. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to practice generating love. Have a great month. make a great month. Love you. Bye-bye.